student's presentation about bullseye from University of the Philippines now.
Okay, good.
I think we have 4 students prepared presentations. So let me explain a little bit about the students over there. Maybe Christina, you can introduce, or maybe they can introduce this to themselves.
Hello.
A lecture from
Hold it.
Okay.
Hi, good afternoon. Hello. So, my name is Harold Aquino. I'm a student, I'm an MS Civil Engineering student at University of the Philippines, Silliman. And my bullseye project, I call it Safe Buildings Initiative. I thought of a project that's close to my heart and that's close to what I'm practicing. So this is what I came up with. So there. Can I have a clicker? So as was mentioned by Professor Oki earlier, earthquakes do not kill people, but collapsing buildings do. I got this photo from the recent Bohol earthquake. It was this last year that a strong earthquake hit the central Philippines. This was in Bohol, and a lot of people died there. Well, it's not as grave as what happened in Tohoku, but it killed hundreds of people as well. Now, I thought of indicators of the strength of a building, and one of the things I thought of that most people would be familiar with are cracks. Now, I did a survey via Google Forms. I surveyed a total of 150 people, and 102 people and counting, and this is the demographics. So they come from different ages. And I asked a couple of questions about cracks. Now, this is what I found out. 96% of these people observe cracks in places where they stay for long hours. That's quite alarming that most of the people I know see cracks every day in places where they stay for long hours. And I also got this data. 2 out of 3 of them feel unsafe when they see cracks. So, see a lot of people get alarmed when they see cracks. And unfortunately, what makes it worse is that 8 out of 10 people do not know which cracks would present an imminent danger to their lives, or which crack actually compromises the integrity of a structure. And these are their typical response. They do not know what to do. So some of them just cover the crack with plaster. Some of them just report to authorities. But because they do not know what to do, some of them will just not choose to occupy that space. Some of them will just think that cracks are everywhere, so they just let it be. And finally, some of them will do nothing because they don't know anything about cracks. My goal here is to inform people on how to identify cracks that present danger to people. This is what I believe in. Knowledge, or basically awareness, as was mentioned by Professor Oki. Awareness leads to action. And action changes situation. If we know what to do, and if we just take actions, we will be able to prevent these disasters. Now, for my specific goals, I would like to create an infographic and share it with my friends, particularly the 100 plus respondents, on how to identify cracks and what to do with them. Now, this is what I come up with that I have yet to show them, because I just finished the survey yesterday, so I made this one and I would like to show my friends this infographic. what to do when you see a crack. So let me share it to everyone. So I want to tell people that the first thing they have to do is to check how big the crack is. So to check how big the crack is, you just have to insert a bond paper, and if it fits, if it doesn't fit, it is a hairline crack, meaning there is no cause for immediate action. You can leave the crack be. But if the paper fits the crack, then we must proceed to the next step, which is to determine the location of the crack. So a lot of the respondents say that they notice cracks either on a beam or a column, or on the floor, or on infilled walls. Now, if they see it on columns, I suggest that they chip off the plaster cover rather. And once they chip it off and the cracks do not reach beyond the plaster, that means that the crack is just superficial, so there's no need to worry. And if they see that the crack reaches even after you remove the plaster, that means that it could be structurally, the structure could be compromised, or it has to be strengthened. So they would have to consult an engineer to make the necessary repairs. This is what I actually did in a building that I visited, but this was already post-earthquake. So it is a Red Cross building in Bohol. So the people there told me that they saw this big cracks. This is how big it is. So what I did was to chip it off, of course with their permission, and we found out that the crack actually do not reach the actual column. So we can even people at their own homes can do this, I believe. So this is quite an easy step. And well, it will give you peace of mind. Or if you see cracks there, then you would have to take actions, because the building might kill you. Now for the floor, I also would like to tell people that there are different types of cracks. If they see a crack that continually widens, then that means that the soil underneath could be undergoing liquefaction or lateral spreading, so they would have to consult an engineer that is an expert on that. And if they see it on an upper story slab, it could be a problem in the structure, so they would have to consult an engineer. And for walls in general, I would like to tell people that most cracks on the wall do not reflect structural danger. However, they might fall off, so you would have to make necessary repairs. You usually found them near doors or windows. And if they are not that big, you can just cover it with plaster, and then it will be fine again. But however, if the cracks progressively widen, it might be an issue of settlement of the ground, so you would have to consult an engineer. I showed this to my dad initially because he was the first person I saw after I finished this presentation, and he found it useful. At least now he knows what to check. By the way, my dad is a salesman. He's not an engineer, and it's the first time he heard of this thing. And after that, he went looking for cracks all over the house to check it. Hopefully, he didn't chip the plaster of our house yet. So I would like to show this to my other friends, and I'd like to say that cracks are not a problem. They're just symptoms needing people's attention, and we have to take action. So that ends my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
I think we'd like to go to the next student, and why don't we have a quick question and answer session at the end altogether?
Ikaw yung susunod.
Thank you very much, Harold.
Ano yun?
Yung kanina pong nakabukas na.
Ay, yung bonsai.
Oh.
The next student will be Amia.
Good evening, SFC. Good evening, Javan. Because there's so many SFE at KO campuses, so I like to generalize. Good evening, Javanese people. Good evening, University of the Philippines, and my name is Amiel Mac Ibarras, and I'm a third-year civil engineering student of the University of the Philippines, Diliman. I'm actually a student of Sir Harold earlier who presented, so I'd like to start my presentation. I'm sorry. So my presentation is actually just like what Dr. Oki's student did. So I have this goals is and my short-term goal is to make someone take action in preparation for disasters and to make that person an educator of BOSAI himself or herself. And for my long-term goal, I plan to conduct a BOSAI lecture just like what Dr. Oki does. So for the fulfillment of my short-term goal, I chose the target by conducting a survey to 57 high school and university students, and these are the results. So first I asked them, have you taken any BOSAI course? And generally, those responded said no. And for the second question, I asked them if they were going to be ready for an earthquake in January 1, 2020, and obviously, well, surprisingly, more people said no. And a follow-up question to that is here. So I asked them if what if an earthquake will happen the next day after they answered the survey. And well, the people, well, as you can see, the graph here shows a relatively higher number of students than this one's graph. This shows that they are not motivated because even though I still gave them 1 day to prepare, they chose to answer no. So after that, I asked some questions regarding their knowledge of what they are going to do if an earthquake occurs. And basically, the summary of results is the following. So they do know the basics of BOSAI, however, they are not motivated. So the target that I chose is someone who can motivate them. And considering Filipino close family tie, I consider their grandparents or their basically their parents. And for my target, I chose here. She's my grandmother. So her name is Magdalena Alegre Acoban. She is 82 years old. And her current responsibility is she is a teacher to toddlers at our church. So I chose her because she is generally alone at home, and I want her to be informed. And furthermore, he can take advantage of being a teacher to toddlers to educate BOSAI to not only to those children but also to their parents. And I gave her the same set of questionnaire that what my survey contains. So basically, these are the question and answer portion. So have you taken any course related to disaster preparedness? She answered no, but she has experience facing a severe typhoon several years ago. And next I asked her, do you think it will be ready for an earthquake that will happen in January 1, 2020? She said yes. And for the next question, do you think it will be ready for an earthquake that will happen tomorrow? Well, she said no. So this question basically gives her awareness that she is not yet prepared for those disasters. And it's like this question gives her pressure that, oh, I must take action. So I thought, why not add pressure to her so that she will take action? So I showed her videos of, well, this is not actually a video, but a picture, but I showed her a video of the recent magnitude 7.2 earthquake in Bohol, and I followed and following that was a video of the Tohoku earthquake, and after that I showed her and I asked her again, are you willing to prepare as soon as you are free? And she said yes, because what happened before became an important lesson to me. And the following set of questions tests her knowledge about what she is going to do in case of an earthquake occurs. So first is, what will you do to protect yourself if a magnitude 7 or higher, perhaps, happens if you are inside a building? Well, she assumed she is in a weak, high-rise building, so she said she would go down or go out to find a safer place. And for the next question, how about if you are on the street? So she said stay away from electrical posts, buildings, and trees. So that ends my, well, I gave her the last question that if she is willing to share this knowledge to those people around them. Well, she said yes. And that ends my question and answer portion. Well, after that, I gave her a crash course of what I learned from Dr. Oki's lectures. And after those is this one. We did this in her house. Well, basically those furniture that aren't attached to the walls are posing danger in case of a shake occurs. So what we did is to put this kind of support so that it won't fall off. And also we called those engineers who constructed their house. It's pretty old and it's not yet retrofitted. So they said that they identified the weak parts of the house, and they said that we should put these columns that will temporarily support before the retrofitting happens. And this one is the upright piano in our house. Well, we also fastened it in that way because we're thinking it might be translated if a ground motion occurs. This one, if you can see that red circle. So that ends my short-term goal, and for my long-term goal, I'm planning to have a BOSAI lecture in April. It will be basically done in our church. Well, I chose April because that's the month that we youth are assigned to, and I am the associate president for the youth group. And I'm currently advocating BOSAI, and I want those people around me to be safe and to learn how to prepare for natural phenomena and thereby mitigating disasters. And so, in conclusion, apart from educating the people around you to protect themselves, I think you should educate them on how to educate the people around themselves so that the information would be stagnant around us, and much more people would be safe. And I suppose that BOSAI is like a chain that protects people from disasters. And if you share that education to other people, you form a link. And if another person shares the education to another group of people, you form much more many links. And basically, the more people, the more links. So this increases our protection as a community. And if natural disasters occur, the economic impact will decrease because we as a community are strong. So we can mitigate disaster by this approach. So we should not. Our ultimate goal must be that all people must be protected, not only those people around us. So that ends my presentation. I hope you gained something from it. Thank you very much. And good evening.
The video can also capture this, right?
Can you make it
I am Javette Esguerra from UP Diliman, Faculty of the Institute of Civil Engineering. Good evening to also to Chulalongkorn and the University of Malaysia, Science Malaysia. Okay. I'm here to tell you about my project or my simple assignment. So I first planned who to target. My first targets were my mother and my sister. I chose them because my mother is especially the one that plans everything in our house, and my sister is currently living by herself somewhere far from us. So family planning or house planning is very important in BOSAI or in disaster preparation. So I chose targets for them. The same targets were first identifying the hazards in their location. So since my mother is in Quezon City where I reside, and my sister is in the province in Abra or a mountainous region, we had different hazards presented in their location. So the next one is a discrete interview. I say discrete because I did not tell them that I am talking about them today. I did not actually tell them that I am interviewing them. I incorporated every question in our daily conversation, such as when there was an announcement of a typhoon, I asked my mother what experiences she had about typhoons. So that is how I conducted this interview. Next is, I had to convince my mother to bring some materials to my sister who is very far away. So after we went there, my sister would then be convinced of the importance that we had to travel a very long way and 9 hours just to go to her, and so she will be thinking about buying her own materials or supplies for that. Then I will then convince my sister first about emergency kits, and next is me and my sister would force my mother to buy emergency kits now for our own family. So specific goals would include first, I think this should be knowledge. The knowledge they need would be compacted into one handout or leaflet, as I would call it. And then next would be that we would sit down and plan out what we need to change, what we need to edit out in our house, or what we need to fix in our house. So my mother, specifically, the third goal is to convince her to actually buy the items, and then convince my sister to buy items for herself. And lastly would be extending help, is going to my sister and bringing the items. And lastly, since my sister lives in a place of different dialect, I asked her to learn the language itself. So first is the target, so my mother. I had to jot down the information. This is my mother. So the information is first, she is very old. She is now the eldest of 9. The reason is most of my aunts have died or passed away. And she previously lived in Makati City, but now lives in Quezon City. Her work is in a 4th floor in the next building, and she goes to work and does housework all by herself. So she always tells me, I'm too busy to do this, or I'm too busy to do that. Then I asked about her disasters, or the disasters she experienced. First is the Casiguran earthquake, or the collapse of Ruby Tower. It occurred in the wee hours of the morning, so that's 4:19, and she thought there was no earthquake at all. She just found out about the earthquake when news came in the morning. So the action is very passive. She just thought she was dreaming. Then the second earthquake was more felt. It had a magnitude of 7.8, and it was nearer to our location, or to her location. So the action she actually took was, she went out of the building, and as soon as all the tremors stopped, she called home and checked up on us, her children. So in this way, actually, we Filipinos don't know what to do when there is an earthquake. So we are not aware, or she was not aware then, of what to do. She did not know if her building was safe, or if it was safe actually to go outside. Some posts might have collapsed on her if she went outside, but she did not know that. Okay? And then lastly, floods. So frequently there are floods in her region here, as her home is here down near the Pasig River. She said that there was one time she had to evacuate from their home, but only to go to her neighbor's house, which has a 2nd level. There was no government intervention to take them to an evacuation center. At that time, there was no evacuation centers for them. And then for the typhoons, well, frequently we just stay at home when there is a typhoon. And in the Typhoon Ondoy, although we were safe in Quezon City, my aunt and my grandmother unfortunately died in the process of the floods. So this is the fast track of Ondoy, and that was the time that I realized there is a need for people to know when to evacuate. Okay, my relatives died because they were unable to evacuate. My grandmother was too old, so my aunt said, "Let's just stay at home." But since it was a one-story house and the water level rose to the ceiling, they were unable to escape the place. So, with that, I asked her what she would do during a disaster, and the truth is she said nothing. She would do nothing. I asked her again, what would you do if you had a week to prepare? She said nothing. I asked her if she had a month to prepare. No action. And then, so her reason was because you can't predict when it will happen. You can't predict what you need. You can't predict why you would, what the things you would need, what would happen. Or she just told me, when the time comes that there is a disaster, I will act upon it then. And then my conclusion is that she just firmly believes in this bahala na trait of us Filipinos, where we just put it up until the time that we really need it. And so I had to convince her, but to convince her, I thought I needed to go through my sister. So because she asked, what do? I thought we can now find a way for her to act upon this disaster prevention. So just as a strategy, we went to Abra, which is this location. This is Quezon City and this is Abra, or La Paz Abra. It is 421 kilometers as said by Google Maps. So we traveled all the way from here towards that place, which took us 9 hours. In travel, I had to convince her that we had to travel. The reason why I put here that it almost failed is because she was doubting so much of going there. And then I told her it won't cost that much. From our 27,000 estimate, we just went to 25,000. The reason why it went up this price is because the van rent went up, and also the refrigerator cost us half of this price. And then this is the place now of my sister. She lives alone in this house, this part of the house. It is retrofitted only outside, so only the walls are constructed in concrete, and the insides are wood. So this is the inside, and this is lastly what we brought to her. Okay. So after this, I went now to my sister and targeted her as a person. And then she is a doctor that is serving in the municipality of La Paz. The reason why I chose her is because she is the only municipal doctor that is serving 40,000 people. In that place, they actually don't know much about disaster prevention. And then here, this is the location. If this is the capital, their location is here. So they are very near the capital of Benguet. Help is very near, but still it is around 45 minutes by car. And then there is a near fault line, an active fault line, I believe. Here, this is the Abra River Fault, and it is also surrounded by mountains. So this is the picture I took from their place. This is the capital of Abra. And I also asked her the same questions. She said she would just call someone for help. And what will she do to prepare? She said probably need items. Then she does not know what items to put. She just told me there is a kit you can buy in NDRRMC, or National Disaster Risk Reduction Management, and it costs them 8,000 pesos per kit. So that is per person. And then lastly, I concluded that she does not know that much about planning for disasters. But I just convinced her that we can just buy ourselves or buy the items ourselves. And lastly, as international, similar to the lecture of international students, I asked my sister to find out the terms needed in emergencies. So these are the terms, and I can't pronounce them, but I hope she can. So just as a conclusion, my sister is more open-minded because my mother has gone through so much disasters that she believes they don't need preparation at all. If she survives it then, she will survive it now. That is her belief. And my sister, who is open-minded, it's now easier to approach. As a conclusion, she is easier to approach in terms of my planning. Okay? So, I have succeeded only on the fourth part. In the actual preparation of their kits, I have not yet given them the opportunity to buy. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think we have one more students from.
Alin? Which one? Presentation. Ito. Copy ko na.
Dave.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Giselle Jane Abaro. I'm currently a graduate student enrolled in the master's program of Material Science and Engineering here in UP Diliman. Now, I have prepared a simple presentation regarding my homework, which is motivation strategy towards both sides. My targets will be 2 females, one unmarried female, 22 years old. The other one is a mother of 2 kids. I chose them because I remember Dr. Oki's presentation, her lecture about, she showed her lecture about the homework of one of her former students, wherein there was a couple and a single person who worked with each other, and the couple was able to help the single person in preparation for the earthquake. The first target would be a graduate student working part-time as a research assistant. So that's her. She's my friend. She spends most of her time in a ceramics laboratory in our department. It's a very small laboratory, but it's filled with glasswares and some equipment that are too big that would, I think, would be very dangerous for her if she stays there for a long time when an earthquake occurs. Now, her family was one of the victims in the recent Super Typhoon Yolanda. My target number 2 is a mother of 2 kids. She spends most of her time at home, and she said that she has never had any disaster-related experience in the past. Now, for my preliminary interview, I asked both of them, have you taken any precautionary measures before, or have you planned anything in case an earthquake occurs? They said no, and they have no plans of doing any preparation in the near future. Then I asked them, the second question, what if a magnitude 2 earthquake suddenly occurs? What would be the first thing that you would do? Now, target number 1 said, the magnitude 2 earthquake would only be a mild shake, so she guessed that she would be able to secure heavy and expensive equipment right away. But target number 2 said she would just go to a clear area together with her kids. Now, I rephrased the question. What if a magnitude 9 earthquake would occur? What would be the first thing that you would do? I was surprised with target number 1's answer. She told me that she heard or she read about the triangle of life concept, and she said that she'd immediately find a sturdy structure, or if she's outside, she would find a clear area. But then most of us know that the triangle of life isn't always effective. Target number 2 said even if the earthquake is a magnitude 9, should still go to a clear area. And then what if after the earthquake you survive? What would be the first thing that you'll do? They both said that they'll go check on their families, and if they're at school or work, they'll just assess the extent of damage and then leave immediately if it's safe. Now, I observed that both of my targets were most likely motivated to prepare in the presence of forecasts and predictions. Because the questions I asked them, I repeated those questions, but in a case where a storm would occur. And I was surprised because they had more idea of how to prepare for a storm rather than an earthquake. They said that it's because in a storm is something that you can predict, a natural phenomena that you can predict through the Pag-asa here in the Philippines. But the earthquake, there is no way to predict when an earthquake would occur. And then they said they have more knowledge in preparing for a storm than an earthquake. And then Target 1 had a more detailed plan of escape and survival measures during earthquakes. And then my strategy, I wanted to know what the dictionary definition of what motivation is, the word motivation. And Merriam-Webster said it's an act of or process of giving someone a reason for doing something. And I thought that persuasion is almost the same thing, because when you persuade the person, you try to sell the person an idea. But this time, when you're trying to motivate a person, you're trying to give them or sell them a reason for preparing, for doing something, for preparing for a natural phenomenon or a disaster. And I tried to list down a number of hindrances to motivation. I did this by using Dr. Oki's lectures. What I learned from her lectures, I integrated it in my presentation. I thought that maybe the first hindrance would be lack of self-worth. I mean, it might sound funny, but there really are people who are not willing to save themselves in times of disaster. You have to ask them, do you value your life? Are you willing to save yourself in cases of disaster? Because I've met some people before who would just say that if it is your time to die, then it is your time, and they don't have any sort of plans to save themselves. And the second would be unawareness. That's what we're trying to target right now. Third would be procrastination, or the absence of a deadline, just like what Dr. Oki said. Some people see that there is no deadline. There is a homework, but there is no deadline for it. That's why people fail to take action. And then the lack of strategy. Some people may be aware, and then they want to take action, but they don't know what to do first. So we have to target that in this hindrance. When we get through all those, we get motivation. So I thought I should have a strategic formula. When I combine this with ethos, pathos, and logos, because like I said a while ago, I think that motivation is almost similar to persuasion, then I'd get a both-side motivated individual. So, how did I target hindrance 1? First, I asked my target people, do you value your life? Do you want to survive disasters? And are you willing to save yourself in cases of natural calamities? So I was fortunate enough because my targets said yes in all of those questions. For hindrance number 2, on awareness, I showed them that earthquakes occur both locally and abroad. So I showed them images of the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and 2013 Bohol earthquakes. So I chose images and videos that appeal to the emotions, pathos at its finest. And then I used very minimal numbers or statistics because in one of Dr. Oki's lectures, she said that identifiable lives are more effective in convincing people to take action rather than using statistics. These are the pictures that I showed them. a little bit of statistics. If there were, oh, sorry. And in Bohol, if there were 8 missing, 877 injured, and 209 deaths, I asked them, did you ever realize that one of these numbers could have been you? You could have been missing, you could have been injured, you could have been killed. Now, do you think you're safe? Now, for hindrance number 3, how did I target hindrance number 3? I tried to inform them of their vulnerability. I showed them this article released by the Philippine News Agency via interaction.com. And I said that according to Fieldbox, UP Diliman and Ateneo de Manila University reside near or atop a fault line, specifically the West Valley fault line. And then, when is the deadline for the earthquake? Well, it started years ago. According to Steelbox, in the year 2011, this fault line, the West Valley fault line, has not moved in 200 years, and therefore it may be ripe for movement. And an earthquake could occur anytime now, any day. And it was predicted to be around 7 point something magnitude, similar to that of the Bohol earthquake in 2013, last year. So, how did I target hindrance 4, the lack of strategy? I tried to compile certain suggested strategies coming from these references. When I compiled them, I showed them to my targets in order to inform them of what they can do before, during, and after an earthquake. So, the question is, was I successful in motivating them or not? The target number 1 said she was so motivated by the videos, images, and the facts that she's not exactly safe. And so she immediately thought of a strategy on how she should protect herself and escape. Now, this is her strategic plan. This is the ceramic laboratory. Brown boxes are tables or desks, and then the red ones would be the furnitures that she thought would be dangerous for her when there's an earthquake. Now, this one is a very scary furniture. This is a fume hood. A fume hood is where you work with chemicals, and it's a very, very big furniture equipment. And then she said that if you would have a low magnitude earthquake, because she usually works around here. There's usually a chair over here, and if there's an earthquake, this fume hood could fall on her. So she said if there's a low magnitude earthquake, she would immediately go to this office together with her boss or her supervisor. That is provided that the desks are secured, and then she would hide under the table. She would no longer use the concept or the triangle of life concept. And then, if she has a chance to leave the laboratory, she wouldn't go through the main door because she said there's a possibility of stampede in case there's an earthquake. So these are windows. These blue ones are windows. I asked her, so would you leave through this window? Because she can fit through the windows. The windows are big enough for her to fit in. But she doesn't want to live through these windows. She wanted to leave through this one. Why? This is her working in the laboratory. That's the fume hood. As you can see, it's very big. And if it falls on her, I bet she'd immediately die. This is the window, which I suggested, but she doesn't want to go through there. This is the desk, where she wants to hide in case there's an earthquake. Why? Because when she passes through this window, the window I suggested, there would be this thing up here which could possibly fall on her. But if she leaves through this window, it would be a lot safer. And then when she goes out, there's an open field, a clear area, and she thought that it would be safer for her to stay there. Okay. Now, for target number 2, I quoted her. These are some of her comments. She said the best strategy in preparing would be to first keep in mind that the earthquake could occur anytime. And then, when you already know that the earthquake could occur anytime, you can now proceed with the preparations. And that's what motivated her the most. She said that the materials I showed her, the pictures, the videos, and the infos were worth sharing, and she's willing to share these materials with her loved ones and her friends. Now, my conclusion, experience, I think, is the best key to motivation. But of course, whether there's experience or not, preparation is compulsory. And I think that the method I used to motivate them, my targets, was effective. Because both of my targets were motivated to prepare and learn more techniques in preparing. I also saw that target number 2 is now equally eager to prepare as target number 1. Another interesting thing I noticed was that both of them, in their answers, had answers like they'll pray to God and then they'll thank God if they get saved or if they survive the earthquake, but they leave everything to God. Aside from their preparations, they thought that God would be in control. And that's it. Thank you.
So thank you all from UP Diliman. And
We have
I
one more
believe
presenter.
okay.
Hi, this is my presentation about motivating people to take action for BOSAI. So, I am Brihal T. Villanueva. I am a fourth-year Electronics and Communications Engineering student. I was a Philippine Tohoku Goodwill Ambassador last April 2012, where I went to the Tohoku region after the Great East Japan earthquake or the Tohoku earthquake as part of the Japan East Asia Network of Exchange for Students and Youths program. I am also an active student leader, and through the Genesis program, I am currently an environmental disaster mitigation advocate because of being part of the Genesis program and because of what I've experienced during the program as a Philippine Tohoku Goodwill Ambassador. Previously, for the Genesis program, we are about to leave for Japan on March 27, 2011, but because of the Tohoku earthquake, we were delayed for a year, mainly because the Japanese government wants us to be safe. The reason why they sent us a year after to look on the effects of the Tohoku earthquake at the Tohoku region and to other places in Japan. Okay, so my target audience are Caloocan High School students. I'm an alumnus of this high school, and it is one of the biggest high schools in the Philippines. It has a student population of 10,000 plus, and when I was there, I graduated there 2010. There is an open field where we usually have demonstrations for earthquake drills. But now that open field is transformed into a covered court. The reason why I see the students there as more vulnerable compared to our time when I was there. Furthermore, there are several vulnerable old buildings there. So this is a map of Caloocan High School. These are instructional buildings. These buildings have 4 floors and they were built in 1990s. These are 3-floor buildings and also built in the 90s. So basically, these buildings are quite old, and whenever an earthquake occurs, we thought back then that so the exits of the buildings are located here
there on both sides, and we can immediately run to this open field. But now that open field is our rendezvous point. It was converted into a covered court. So now every student don't know where they can go out of the school because there are fences all over the school for security reasons. So they don't have any place for them to get to whenever an earthquake strikes. So they are very vulnerable inside those buildings, maybe because those are already old. Furthermore, the spaces between the buildings and between offices here are very cramped. So if you can imagine, you don't have a place where you can stay during an earthquake. So the reason why I chose Caloocan High School students. So my goals and strategy include for the students to realize the urgency and the unexpectedness of an earthquake happening now. Because like what the previous presenter said, there will be an earthquake happening and we don't know when will it happen. And I want to catch them off guard so that I can know their reactions whenever an unexpected earthquake strike. Another goal of mine is to show the effects of the disasters in Japan, the Great East Japan earthquake, through pictures and videos that I took myself and videos available in the internet for them to realize how vulnerable the Philippines is. Then my third goal is to inspire students to act and to be responsible for themselves, not only for themselves but for others as well, by showing them what they can do. Next is to make students think of their own ways to tackle the problem and adapt to the situation, because those students have their own way of thinking, and I cannot impose or force how I think to them, so that I want them to think of how they can do things and how can they tackle the problem so that they can survive whatever situation there may be. And my last goal is to support the students upon having initiatives for them to pass information to their loved ones and to follow up on them for the sustainability of this. Okay, so for the implementation, my target was third year Batangas. Their room is, their building is this. Their room is located on the center of the building. As I mentioned, the exits are on the sides, and they are on the ground floor of the building. Imagine that there are 2,000 students, roughly 2,000 students on that building, and they are only, that section is only one of the numerous sections in there. So they must be prepared for an earthquake because they might get killed, all of them might get killed. So there are at least 40 students there, and their classes are from 1:20 p.m. to 8:40 p.m. They have nighttime classes. Okay, so this is activity 1. For when I started doing this, this is a forum-like thing. I lectured on them, but the first activity I did after I introduced myself was to simulate an earthquake. I told them, what if an earthquake happens now? Then at first they cannot understand what I'm saying. Then I told them, what if an earthquake happens at this moment? Then a lot of them went down on the cover and hold on that position. And as you see, the student, he brought an armchair on his head. Then I want to know their instantaneous reactions. Okay, so these are some of the students on the first activity. Then I want to see how they react, because like what I've said, it is not, I cannot impose or I cannot force what I think on them. I want to see first how they will react if an earthquake happens. Then most of the students, like what I said, were trained to duck, cover, and hold because of frequent earthquake drills happening in that school. But some got hysterical at first, like some were shouting as if there is a real earthquake when I told them, and some tried to go out of the room because they thought that the safest place is outside. And also, a student realized that she's not prepared when an earthquake strikes because she doesn't really know what to do. She just duck over and hold, and after that, she doesn't know what's next. Okay, so the next activity I did was to relate to them what happened on the Great East Japan earthquake. When I was in Japan, we were told some anecdotes and stories regarding the Tohoku earthquake, and this is my drawing of an island, Kesunuma Oshima in the Miyagi Prefecture. I told them the story about this island that the tsunami came from this part of the Pacific Ocean. Then the tsunami went here. This is a mountain, Mount Kameyama. Tsunami went here. Then there is a bay here from Kesunuma City. The tsunami went here. Then the tsunami went back. Then the tsunami went again there. So they had 3 tsunami waves. The reason why, well, my goal here was for them to realize that if Japan is vulnerable to a disaster, how much more is the Philippines can be vulnerable to such disasters and the effects of those disasters to us Filipinos. So I showed them these pictures. I presented them. One is this boat. This boat came from the ocean and it was drifted ashore in Quezon City. Those are cars that were drifted away during the Tohoku earthquake. Then what I really did here is to relate to them that the issue is important, that these things that I'm showing to them, these are happening, and like what you said, Dr. Oki, that it is better that we show them pictures, that we show them what really happened, for them to realize the importance of being prepared for an earthquake or for any disaster that may happen. For this, I wanted them to realize that if Japan is vulnerable as a country, the Philippines is more vulnerable. That's why we must be more prepared for natural or for disasters or for effects of natural phenomena. Okay, so here I want them to realize that once that they have the will to help themselves, they can also have the will to help others. Like what I said, one of my goals is for them to have the will to help themselves so that they can be able to channel what they know, the information they have, for them to be able to help others. I want to show here that anyone empowered can make positive change for us to minimize the effects of natural phenomena. This is a video. I won't be showing it now because we have limited time. But this video shows what happened before and after the Tohoku earthquake. This is a thank you video of Japanese to the people who helped them. One story here is that there is a teacher, Taylor Sensei, and when the earthquake happened, she went outside with her students, and she escorted her students to their families so that they can be safe. The Taylor Sensei went to her apartment, then the tsunami came. After she saved the lives of those students, she died because she was stuck at her apartment. And after that, I showed them that there were many people helping Japan after the Tohoku earthquake, and that big or small, we can help. And it is we can help not only the Japanese people because of the Tohoku earthquake, but us, because that might happen to us. So other than that, I also shared my experiences on empowering others as a student leader. Whenever I conduct forums related to disaster mitigation and disaster prevention, I showed that video for them to realize that they can help others. And I also shared practices that taught in class, like the bonsai bags, for them to have an idea what they can do in order to be prepared for such disasters.
Then the last activity was to support their small initiatives. Their teacher asked one of the students to prepare a bonsai bag for the class so that they can be prepared whenever an earthquake strikes. For example, she wants that bag to include a flashlight so that they can be prepared because they have classes until 8:40 p.m. so that they can be prepared once an earthquake strikes and they are stuck in that area. And other stops in there that were taught on the lectures. Okay, so these are 5 students. 1 was asked and 4 approached me after the lecture. Well, this is Sheila Soriano. Her target are her churchmates because she is afraid that while they are in church, a disaster might strike. So she wanted to inform her churchmates of what they can do when a calamity strikes. And then this is John Joseph Tolentino. Here in the Philippines, an extended family is we have extended families living in the same house. And he has, from what I remember from him, 15 people living in his house. So he wants to prepare his family for possible effects of earthquake, storms, and floods because he is living in a low-lying area. Caloocan is a low-lying area and is so flood-prone, aside from being prone to earthquakes. This is Jeneline. This is the one asked by the teacher to get a bonsai bag for the class so they can be prepared to evacuate once an earthquake happens. Then this is Miko. He often plays computer games. And he is always on computer rental shops. And computer rental shops here in the Philippines are crammed. And what he wants is to talk with his playmates on how they can evacuate once an earthquake strikes while they are playing computer games. And this is Mark Sungahid. He wants to tell his family the information I shared to them, and for them to prepare for them to be anticipative of natural disasters. He also lives in a low-lying flood-prone place. So this is a bit more of a conclusion. Actually, this activity is ongoing. I will be giving an update once our homework is completely passed on the 21st. I currently have an active communication with them through Facebook and other means so that I can give active support to them because they approached me but they have their target audience but they don't know what to do. So I think from the lectures, that is what I can give them, the knowledge on what they can do in order for them to relay the information they've learned to their family and to their loved ones. I want this effort to be sustainable so that it can affect more people. I believe in the pay it forward scheme that a person helps 3 people, then 3 or more people, then each of those will help 3 or more people and so on. If this will happen, I believe that in one day every Filipino can be prepared for natural disasters. We can minimize the effects of natural disasters once, for example, that earthquake from the West Valley fault might happen. And really, I want to empower others, and I think through this homework, I was able to empower others. And like what I've said, I'll give an update on how these students were able to empower others through my lecture. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we'd like to thank you very much for all this presentation from UP Diliman. I would like to get some comments from professors. Oki-san?
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. Like, it's like all excellent. I'm so like moved, by your motivation, and I would like to ask you, what was the motivation, to motivate people, I really want to know, that's gonna be a key, for the bonsai, work. But I would like to give some comments to each of you, but I guess it's time to close the seminar because it's already like 8:30 in Japan. So I can send you back the comment through the website, and if you have any question or like if you want to give me some like comments about your homework or also my presentation today. Maybe we can communicate through the website. It's okay?
Okay.
Yeah, we got already 3 submissions, and I think we can give some comments from Dr. Oki. And if you submit more, maybe we can discuss later.
Yeah. So please upload, like submit your PowerPoint or PDF, whatever. Then I can give you comments to each of you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Oki. Okay. What about Professor Murai?
Well, actually, I'm so impressed, and thank you very much for the presentation. And I'm impressed in terms of, the concept was very much understood. I mean, the both side lecture and the way of, identifying the issues and also the relationship with the people, and motivating, and also repeatedly said was kind of action, and then action too. When a person understood the issue, and then probably that can be communicated, and then that's going to be a kind of creation of another motivation to the others, and for understanding about the concept of the both sides. So that's really, I really respect your presentation and the work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And also thank you so much to for all the participants participated from Chulalongkorn University and University of Philippines and other sites. And hope to see you next time.
Yeah, and remember, the EBA program is going to be, the very important part of the subject is, this both side, and then disaster recovery management mitigation type of area. So, and relating to the other area as well. So, the EBA will continue on this subject in various ways. So, stay tuned. Right?
Okay, thank you very much. Next time is going to be in March, the first Wednesday, and the topic is environment. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Tokyo is cold.
Yes, it's freezing.